Good morning. I thought I'd do a garden tour for you all because the garden is looking lovely right now. So it's June 27th and this is the potager. Let me start over here. So in this bed here we have rutabaga coming up. Prior to the rutabaga we have lettuce and turnips there. We have some carrots and beets and some Swiss chard. And behind it we have sugar magnolia peas, which are purple potted peas, which keep their color when cooked. Very delicious and very prolific. It's in the 80s all week, so the peas are kind of singing their swan song. In the bed right next to it, we have some honey nut squash, which is a butternut squash, but it's small, like individual sized. The bed has just freshly been planted with some gourds. I'm not sure if we have time for them to grow, but it might. Behind the bed there is more sugar magnolia peas. That's a little lamb's ear. And then over here on this side of the bed we have an acorn squash, and the variety is honey bear. In the bed right next to that we have parsnips and leeks, some salvia. On this side of the bed here we planted some carrots. And then we have a little pot that has rosemary and some marigolds in it. One big addition to the garden this year has been the cattle panel trellises, which I absolutely love. I guess arches is a better word to put it. So these arches are made out of cattle panels from Tractor Supply, and I have 2 of them, and they go over my garden. Climbing on them, on this side I have cucumbers. The ones all the way to this side are Boston picklers, and then these are straight 8. This bed is actually one of my favorite beds in the garden. On the strings in the back, I have emerald pole beans just starting to climb up. And then in front of them, I have a mix of zinnias and calendulas. I think it's amazing, the color there. I love it. I have my cute little chickens that I painted, some basil. My lettuce bed is near the end. I just pulled out my head lettuce, so the leaf lettuce. I'm worried about it bolting, so I'm trying to use as much lettuce as I can. I have some beets in the front. These are golden Detroit, and these are red Detroit. And behind that I have purple cosmic carrots. And in the next bed over, I have some herbs. I have summer savory. I have cilantro that I am letting go to seed so that it will spread. Same thing with a dill. And then I have white scallop squash. I think I can show you. Yes, there's some baby squashes coming. There's some marigolds, of course. I have scallions, some more lettuce. I used to have snow peas over here. I'm going to plant another squash plant this week. Just waiting for the weather to cool a little bit. So in this part of the garden, the gate is back there, I have all my paste tomatoes. So this year I planted a bunch of Amish paste from seed. Everything in my garden is planted from seed. And the Amish paste tomatoes are doing wonderfully. They're a determinate tomato, so I have not been pinching off the suckers. I'm letting them just go to town. And they're doing great so far. In front of the Amish paste on this side of the bed, I have bush beans. These are yellow wax, and then these are royal burgundy. Royal burgundy has a tendency, even though it's a bush bean, to climb a little bit. So I've added these little bamboo teepees with the electrical things from the telephone poles on top. I forget what they're called. More tomatoes, more tomatoes. The tomatoes are doing fabulous. In front of the tomatoes I do have some basil planted in another bed, but it's the same stuff. It's the Amish paste in the background. In the front of this bed though, I have corno Janeiro peppers, bull's horn peppers. They're a long pepper that's supposed to look like a bull's horn a little bit. They're a sweet pepper. They're good for stuffing, frying. And then we're back to the gate again. Then if we, I'm sorry not to go too fast here, if we look this way and we go to the end of the row here, I have my row of slicers. And my slicers are being tied up with a Florida weave method, and they are heavily pruned to prevent disease and to allow airflow. This very first tomato you see is a Rutgers tomato. All of these were grown from seed except for 2 that I will explain to you about them. This one here is Moskvich. Moskvich last year was my first tomato to ripen. None of my tomatoes are ripe yet. This one here is Tonopah. This was a free packet that came with a seed order. I don't know much about the Tonopahs. This one here is one that I did not plant by seed. This is a Supersonic. I had a plant here that did not survive. I don't remember what kind it was. And, ooh, we're splitting here, huh? Let me get rid of him. And I went to Columbus auction and met this old lady who was selling her tomatoes plants. So I bought this from her. It's doing really, really well. And then next to that tomato bed I have Monarda. This is the pollination. Funny thing is, I planted the dark pink Monarda, and this year a little bit of the dark pink came up, but mostly purple. The bees love this stuff. Hello there, Mr. Bee. Bees are just waking up. This plant here is a red ponderosa beefsteak. I don't know, it's very short, much shorter than my other ones, but it is producing. And next to that is a Cherokee purple. Cherokee purple. It's my first year growing them. I don't know if I got an emaciated cat-faced tomato or if they're all supposed to look like that. I've been trying to take off the extra big blooms, but who knows. Next to that is Mortgage Lifter. Mortgage Lifter deserves its name. Look at all the tomatoes on this plant. I accidentally double stemmed this one instead of single stemming it. It is loaded with tomatoes. And then next to that is a black crim. This black crim, unfortunately, was the only black crim that I had. I grew it from seed, and as I was planting it, I broke it in half. And I thought, well, let me put it in the ground anyway and see if it grows some roots. And it did, believe it or not. You grow, girl. And over here I have a volunteer tomato. I don't know what it is. I'm imagining that it would be a cherry tomato. That's usually what volunteers. I have some sunflowers. The sun's coming up. And then going over this way, I used to have eggplant in this bed, but the flea beetles pretty much killed it. So I planted some Hungarian wax peppers, but I planted them late. They're not getting very tall, but they are getting flowers. We'll see. When I tore out the eggplant, I put in another zucchini. This is a Cocozel zucchini, which is one of my favorites. Really good producer. Behind that, I have my late potatoes. And then I have my mid-season potatoes over here. And I have some red onions over here. Behind all of the potatoes is another fence of peas. I'm going to go around the corner and show that to you. I have a volunteer sunflower here that is really tall. So this is a potato bed also. These are early potatoes, red Norland, and in the back are mid-season potatoes, purple Majesty. And then these are the super sugar snap peas. I did pick them this morning, but you can see there's still some there. And also it's getting too hot for the peas, so they are starting to yellow, and it won't be long before they're going to be pulled out. Going around my garden, this is my little work bench here. So this bed was supposed to be an asparagus bed. I dug up and transplanted my asparagus, and some of it did survive. There's a little bit like here, but most of it didn't. I did plant strawberries. My goal was always to do strawberries and asparagus. I have a lot of volunteer dill, as you can see. And that is a weed. Don't know how I missed that when I was weeding the other day. Anyway, so right now this is just strawberries, and there's another asparagus. I don't know what I'm going to do in the fall or this spring next year. So here's some more strawberries. Again, this was supposed to be an asparagus bed, but no asparagus came up at all in this bed, so I put in some tomatoes. Now, these beds have not been protected against voles, so all the tomatoes were planted in little hardware cloth cages to keep the voles from eating the roots. The voles do not bother the asparagus or the strawberries, but they will bother tomatoes. I don't know if that's why they're not doing so well, or if it's just the location. This is a Rutgers. These are not trimmed as heavily as the other ones because they're growing kind of funky and I don't really know what to do with them. This one here I did buy. This is a Mr. Stripey. It's not doing that well. I wish I had put this in with my other slicing tomatoes because I really wanted to see what Mr. Stripey looked like, but maybe next year I'll get some seeds for that. This one here is another Tonopah, which was the free seeds that I got. And this one here is another Rutgers. So these were just like leftover tomato plants that I ended up putting in this area. Like I said, they're not doing really well. I don't know if it's because of the cages or just the location. These are zinnias. Beautiful zinnias. And then this is a sun gold cherry tomato. My thought is you can open up the gate here and just come right into the garden and grab a handful of cherry tomatoes. On this side of the garden we have onions. These are candy white onions. They're doing remarkably well considering that we had so much rain that they ended up getting this disease called onion twister disease. And but they are starting to bulb up. And so I have hope that I will get some onions out of that. Behind that I have a flower bed, literally. These are Gabbera daisies that we bought from QVC, me, Sheila, and Debbie Ford. And behind that we have some tall zinnias. We're back to a trellis here. And I have another bed over here to show you. This is my garlic bed. The garlic is starting to get ready for harvest. I need the bottom two leaves to die off, and as you can see, they're almost there. And this end of the garlic bed, I put in some pumpkins, and I have a sunflower growing back there. This used to be lettuce, and I pulled out the lettuce, and I put in this squash that I got free seeds. It's called Butterbelly. It's a yellow squash. I have some white Russian kale, some red Russian kale, and behind the kale, these are left over from when I had lettuce there. I think there's some kind of beet, so I'm just letting them go. Behind that I have a big old squash plant, and this is 8-ball. And I have 2 8-balls that are really ready for harvest. They're on my menu for tomorrow night. Sliced zucchini, yum. I've got some red onions in the front. A little bit of snow peas hanging on here. I'm not doing that well, but I pulled out all the dead ones, so that's what's left. Behind that I have borage, which volunteered itself, and the bees just absolutely love this stuff. Absolutely loves it. Funny thing too, I have another volunteer down here, and it's white. I don't know what that's all about instead of blue. So coming back, I have a little workbench over here in the middle of my arch. This is my arch. Oh, I'm sorry. I missed these 2 plants. This is a Tuscan kale, dinosaur kale they call them. And this right here with the beautiful yellow flowers is spaghetti squash. Hopefully it will climb up over my trellis. And there's my little workbench under my trellis. And then we come to this little bed here, which is a metal bed. I just put this in this year. These are some volunteer potato plants that were in my compost. I have some flowers along the bottom. And then this is a cayenne pepper plant. Coming around the front, I've got marigolds in the front. I've got carrots. I don't remember which variety of carrot I've planted here. Good gardener. And then this is an English telegraph cucumber. These are those long cucumbers that don't have a lot of seeds. And I'm guessing that this is a female plant. Look how long that little thing is already. Amazing. It's already starting to climb the trellis, so hopefully it will go up and over. This is my bell pepper bed. The first 4 plants, are King of the North. They always do really well for me, and they are just producing like crazy. And then behind them I have other varieties of bell peppers that are not really producing that well at all. But, oh, there we go. There's one back here. Yay! And then on the other side of this bed, I have my hot pepper bed. So in the back here, these 4 plants in the back, which are not producing any peppers yet, but they are flowering, are my Anaheims. And then these 2 are serrano peppers, and the serranos are doing great. I've never grown serranos before, so I'm not really sure how big they get. Then I have 5 jalapeno plants. They're also doing really, really well. And some flowers, a little storage area. And then this is my garden shed. Garden shed, which has a most lovely feature that my husband made the garden shed, but he also made this beautiful stained glass window up here. Do you see that? How beautiful is that? In the afternoon, the sun just fills up this garden shed. It's gorgeous. And then the last thing, I have another gate over here. We are back to the very first bed that we looked at, and the very first trellis that we went through. And then this is my arbor, and those are my dogs barking. The last thing is this. My husband is building me a greenhouse. This is the 6x8 greenhouse from Harbor Freight. We are going to change out the door. We already realized that's just not going to work. But this little greenhouse is going to be right outside of my garden. I cannot wait. I'm very excited about this. So that was my garden tour. I hope you enjoyed it. Bye.